Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. Sharif Ishak, 30 minutes from now, talking about the Saints. Sharif was not up in beautiful Wisconsin, which turned very ugly for the Saints in the fourth quarter. But he'll have his thoughts on that, and then we'll talk about the Saints getting ready for Tampa Bay with Alvin Kamara and likely without Derek Carr. That's coming up at the bottom of this hour. I want to talk LSU in this hour, and speaking of ugly, the defensive back group has not been great in a couple of big spots for this team. We're all very well aware of that. And those, of course, are the Florida State and Arkansas games. In those two games, you're facing very veteran quarterbacks who have been around the block and seen it all, and they played great in those games. Jordan Travis was 23 of 31. He threw for 342 yards and 4 touchdowns, had the one interception that Deuce Chestnut stepped in front of around the line of scrimmage. KJ Jefferson, 21 of 31. He threw for 289. 3 touchdown passes for KJ Jefferson and really 1 interception. I'm not going to give LSU a ton of credit for the last play of the game. Certainly not going to hold that against KJ Jefferson. So if you put those two outings together, you've got 44 of 62. That is 71% completion, which is way too much. For 631 yards, that's 315 yards per game, basically. And then you've given up 3.5 touchdowns to 1 pick per game. 7 TDs and 2 picks. It's just too good. 71% for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns, 3.5 touchdowns, is obviously not going to be acceptable. Now, obviously, the outlier here is the game LSU played against Will Rogers. And I would say that Will Rogers was completely lost in the wilderness because he looked that way in their first couple of games prior to LSU, but he actually threw it really well last week. So it's in there, and maybe Mississippi State completely overhauled everything. And they made the improvements from LSU to South Carolina. Maybe not. I don't know. But I do know that against Jordan Travis and KJ Jefferson, LSU was not good enough. So you look at on third down, LSU is 102nd in the country in third down defense. There are only 133 teams. In the SEC, only Kentucky and Vanderbilt have done a worse job of getting off the field on third down. Florida State on third down was 9 of 14. Arkansas was 8 of 13. Between the two games, 17 of 27, that is 63%. Those teams are converting on third downs. It's just really difficult to beat anybody if you never get off the field on third downs. So Brian Kelly was asked yesterday in his press luncheon on Mondays, like, okay, what tweaks need to be made here?
We tend to lose our focus, and we just have to drive that home with this group that when they are doing the little things the right way, they're a pretty good defense. When they try to do like your job and somebody else's job and not their own job, we're not so good. And that's just the maturation of the group. We've got young corners that don't have a lot of experience, and our safeties have to be consistent. They're trying to make up for some inexperience and trying to do a little bit too much, and they just got to do their jobs. And when that group really comes together with our front seven, I think we're going to be a really good defense.
It's interesting because you look back at some of the plays and you look at Keon Coleman going up over the top of 2 different LSU DBs to make jump ball catches in the Florida State game. And it's like, well, he's just better than the guy you got. He just did it to win a game at Clemson. Like, he's just a great player. And so while I wish LSU had a player out there that was every bit as good as Keon Coleman and knocked the ball away, I'm not going to blame too many people for that, right? Like, it just, they threw it up there and the really good player made a really good play. And then I look at, the touchdown that Arkansas scored on Saturday where Jefferson breaks contain and Zy Alexander's looking in the backfield and the guy just runs behind him and he's still looking at KJ Jefferson breaking contain. And that is a mental error. That's just like, oh, You really need to plaster to the receiver, not look at the quarterback, break and contain, and run with your guy when he runs. So that's a different issue. And then I see the tight end running clean, wide open. And Brian Kelly said there may have been a coverage bust from the linebacker. It might have been with Weeks. But that's a busted coverage, a blown assignment. It's not one individual thing that's causing this defensive unit problems. It's not just that they're not athletic enough. It's not just that they don't know where they're supposed to be. It's not just that the opponent's really good. It's just something different every single time. I remember the 2013 team, their defense couldn't stop anybody. That was the year that Mettenberger threw for 3,000 and Jeremy Hill ran for 1,000 and Jarvis caught 1,000 and Odell caught 1,000. They were great on offense, and you'll go right back to that Georgia game in Athens they were really good. But the DBs specifically in the defense that had limited numbers up front, it was basically just Lockett and Gilmore, I think, or maybe Ego Ferguson, and they didn't have anybody else to play. And constantly, the secondary was looking at each other with their arms held out because they didn't know where to be. They were busting coverages, or they were asking, "Where's my teammate?" Or their communication was incredibly poor, and they were very rarely in the right spot. That's not the issue with this team. That's the biggest issue with this DB group is that it's something new almost every situation. Oh, that's a great play by a great player. Oh, yeah, you didn't quite carry out your assignment on an improvised play. Oh, you busted a coverage right there. Oh, you didn't make a play on the ball. And the question is, like, how much of it's fixable? I don't know. But Brian Kelly was asked, have y'all exhausted, like, all your personnel options in the secondary?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's anybody else that we would bring into the game. You know, we'd like to get, obviously everybody healthy, getting all of the guys out there physically. Spates obviously is one guy that we'd like to get back out on the field. I think there's some other tweaks that we can do defensively to see that we get guys in the right position and let them influence the game accordingly. So there's not another guy that, let's take a red shirt off of a particular player or another guy that's going to get in the rotation. You might see some players play a little bit more.
And that's the deal. Like against Florida, like Zy Alexander played in both of these games. He was a starter in both games, Florida State and Arkansas. Now, Deuce Chestnut started outside against Florida State, and Denver Harris has moved into that spot, so there's one move. Major Burns played in both games as a starting safety, but Greg Brooks played against Florida State, and now Andre Sam's out there in his absence. Deuce Chestnut's moved inside. He's played in some slots. Sage Ryan's moved up and down, but he's been there in both games. But I don't think that like LaTerrence Welsh or Ashton Stamps is like, oh, that's the guy that's going to fix it. I don't know. I don't see him every day in practice, but it would be pretty shocking to me if those two guys were not good enough to draw the attention of the coaching staff and to put them in one of the first 4 games. They didn't do enough in practice and scrimmages to warrant that. But then if they did go out there, then all of a sudden, poof, you got to figure it out. These are the guys that need to be out there. The staff's probably got a pretty good idea of who practices the best. It just, in the games, you're looking at Jordan Travis and KJ Jefferson completing 71% of their throws for 315 yards a game and 3.5 touchdowns a game and just 1 pick a game. I just don't know if there's a silver bullet here to make it all better. You can be encouraged by what they did against Mississippi State. Got a lot of pass rush. Did a good job of covering. Just didn't in the other 2 big games that you played. And you still got Jackson Dart to deal with. You still got whatever Ole Miss is going to throw out there. Sorry, you got whatever A&M's going to throw out there. Missouri's got some pretty talented wide receivers. Jermaine Burton's not bad over at Alabama. We'll see what the quarterback situation is when they show up on LSU's schedule. Graham Mertz is playing better. But right now it's puzzling, and it needs to get better because you can't expect to outscore everyone. It's just not going to work. You've got to have a defense get some stops. And when they do, LSU's going to be brutal to beat. They're going to be brutal to beat. They were in Starkville, and they will be moving forward in the games where the defense gets some stops, because I think LSU's offense is going to score far more often than not. They've proven that out. But the defense has got to step up, and it's probably not a personnel change. It's probably guys elevating their level of play. We'll see if that happens or if it doesn't. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.